Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Ryan's Rundown. We've got a new little change of scenery for you today. This episode, we're going to be doing a little basic rundown of the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, which just recently finished out their season. So if you've ever thought about getting into the Housewives franchise or just really want to know a little bit more about Salt Lake City before you dive head first, keep watching and hopefully I can give you some basics without spoiling anything for you. For context, my kind of background with the Real Housewives franchise is I'm still a pretty novice Housewives fan. I started watching the Housewives back in September 2020-ish. I started with Beverly Hills, and that is the only city that I have watched all the way through. I watched all 10 seasons, and so Beverly Hills holds a really special place in my heart. But I've also seen episodes here and there of Atlanta, Dallas, and I've watched 2 full seasons of New Jersey, and I'm currently watching New York. Salt Lake City is the first season, or the first city that I have watched from the get-go. It just premiered, I think it was November 2020, so it's fairly new. I literally tweeted after the first episode, Episode 1 of Real Housewives of Salt Lake City is the definition of chaotic energy. 3 months later, it still serves. That was not wrong. I'm honestly still trying to process the fact that these are real people and not like characters, that none of this is made up. Like, I know that's a reality TV show and we can get into the editing and whatnot. This group of women just feels different. The way they all interact and stuff, it makes sense in a way, but it also doesn't make sense. Does that make sense? I'm just gonna do like a quick rundown of the cast so you can kind of get a feel for who this show is about. So the first cast member is Jen Shah, and she is married to a University of Utah football coach. I love the fact that she refers to her house as the Shaw Ski Chalet. At first I thought it was a joke, and then every single episode, whenever they show the exterior of her house as like a new location, the little title card says Jen's Chalet. So it's like, it's always the Shaw Ski Chalet, and I just think I love that. Jen also lives in her own slightly delusional world, but I love it. Not in a bad way. But without spoiling anything, Jen Shah makes very, very, very good reality TV. Our next housewife is Heather Gay, and Heather is truly, truly, truly the comedic relief of this cast. She is a self-proclaimed bad Mormon, and through this kind of first season we see her toying with the idea of being a non-traditional, non-practicing Mormon, and her struggle between like living a life that she wants and her faith, which is like really interesting. As someone who did not grow up religious, it's very interesting to watch that dynamic play out on the show. And if you are interested in watching the show but don't want to watch something that's going to be super heavily centered around religion, I can assure you that of all of these storylines and plot lines, the faith of these women is definitely important to their characters, but it's not a top tier issue or subject that it's brought up every single episode. Maybe it's too early, but Heather really is the superior housewife on this show. She gives me big Adrienne Maloof vibes, who Adrienne Maloof is a original cast member from Beverly Hills. So that's the vibe I get from Heather. Very big fan of Heather. The next cast member is Whitney Rose. Whitney is introduced as having left the church after having an affair and marrying her boss, who they now have 2 kids together. It's been 10 years and they're still happily married. They really push this like characteristic that Whitney loves stripper poles, so Whitney loves stripper poles. And she is also 3rd cousins with Heather. It is brought up on the first episode but never mentioned again, so that's just another fun tidbit. The next housewife is Mary Crosby. Mary inherited a lot of things after her grandmother died, those things including her family's empire of churches, restaurants, and in her grandmother's will, it was her wish that Mary would marry her grandmother's second husband, so Mary's step-grandfather, in order to then become the first lady of the church. So yes, you did just hear me right. Mary is married to her step-grandfather. If that's not enough reason to watch the show, if you're not interested by this, this is not the show for you. Fun fact is that originally Mary was a friend of a character on the show, meaning that she wasn't a main cast member, but she would appear frequently. But before the show was announced, Mary was made an official cast member. The next cast member is Lisa Barlow. Lisa could also be described as a non-traditional Mormon. She describes herself as a Mormon 2.0 in the fact that she and her husband own a tequila company, and she also does marketing and events for a variety of things, including Sundance Film Festival. I personally connected with Lisa the least out of all the women on the cast, but I know a lot of people are fans of Lisa because she's very direct and outspoken. But she does have my favorite opening tagline, which is, "When you take cheap shots, always expect a hangover." Because like she owns a tequila company. Get it? Like cheap shot. Okay, we're moving on. And the last housewife on this cast is the one and only Meredith Marks. Meredith is the queen of disengaging. She's a luxury jewelry designer, and she's also the mother of aspiring fashion designer Brooks Marks, who I am convinced actually took the semester off of college to be on The Real Housewives. So I really enjoy this city of housewives because it just like feels really fresh. It like feels fresh in a way that they seem like they are in their own little universe in like the snowy mountains of Utah. I personally really love that they actually go into activities every episode and not just go to brunch 50 times an episode. Kind of like Beverly Hills. I still love you though. This is a monumental city in the Real Housewives franchise because it is the last season of Housewives that was entirely filmed pre-COVID. This was filmed approximately like fall 2019-ish to up to about I think February or March of 2020, with the exception of the reunion, which was filmed in January of 2021. And the reunion is also an interesting thing with this city because this is the first city in the Real Housewives franchise to get a 3-part reunion in its first season. So with all that said, if you are looking to get into the Real Housewives franchise but don't really know where to start, I think that Salt Lake City is a good place to start. There's only one season to catch up on. It's only 13 episodes, and it kind of gives you a similar taste of what to expect from other housewife cities, but it's completely different, and it feels like a different direction that Bravo is seeming to go with in terms of Real Housewives cities and personalities, which is kind of refreshing. This is being regarded as one of the best first seasons of any city, so take that with what you will. That is coming from like the bounds and bounds and bounds of people on Twitter who are experts in the Real Housewives. So if this video has intrigued you to even test out the waters of the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, I would love to know your thoughts and talk about it. Also, if you have watched any other Housewives cities that you would recommend that I have not watched yet, please DM me, hit me up. And that has been another episode of Ryan's Rundown.